where Sean Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass.
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man.
Only on the BetQL network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back up my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
My boy BT's got some quick hands down there in Miami, so all about head movement in this one. Welcome back into hour number 2. You're going to fight me, Sports Machine Sean Levine, producer Jake, and now my co-host / opponent, Brendan Tobin. You're going to fight me if I say, besides GSP, I think Rory McDonald, clearly the second best Canadian fighter of all time. Of course, I bring it up because UFC 289 tonight, in Canada, in BC.
Man, Rory was a beast. He really was. And glad to see that his fight is going to the Hall of Fame with Robbie Lawler. That's my favorite one, man. I love that fight. That fight was so damn good. And you think about, man, Roy was on top. If he was just able to withstand it a little bit, what would his career have been if he would have finally gotten the belt, you know? Because that was, that guy he was just a wonder. So, no, not going to fight you on that. I love Roy McDonald. Cool dude, too. I enjoyed it. I got to sit down with him one time when he moved down here because of a COVID lockdown. Everybody was moving down here, dude. And he was a cool guy.
Yeah, that Roy versus Robbie fight, of course, it was going to end up in the Hall of Fame. I think if you ask most people, they would say that's either the best UFC fight they've ever seen or maybe the Tough One finale was the best fight that they've ever seen. But I think that basically those are the two answers. Maybe people have different opinions, but to me, I've always gone back and forth between those two fights. Are you going to fight me if I say Beneil Dariush is actually a really exciting fighter? Not like kind of he's fun to watch. I think he's a really exciting fighter.
No, I'm not going to fight you on that. Like, he is a really exciting fighter. I think it is an interesting thing. I think that one of the things that has been interesting with guys getting their chance and when they get their chance, he is in a division that's not only very stacked, but it's been very weird. You think about the Conor element to everything, the Khabib, like think about all the guys who have been on top in the time that he's been there, so it's a lot of stuff that you have to wade through. So it's not all completely on him. Like, we look right now, and we probably would think about this with a few guys at bantamweight right now, just because there's so many good guys, welterweight. And then you think about a place like heavyweight, and it's like, who is the next guy that we should have fight? Like, it just depends on what division's on fire, then who will pop up there and be that next guy. But no, he's a really exciting fighter. It's cool that if he gets this one tonight, it seems like he'll finally get his respect and finally get that chance at the belt. And I do think that a lot of people would be introduced to what kind of a draw the guy can be or how exciting he can be.
And if you want to hear me and Brendan talk with the aforementioned Beneil Dariush, he's going to join us coming up about a half hour from now. Beneil Dariush, Benny joins the show about a half hour from now. I'm going to ask him if he's surprised that he's the favorite tonight, which he is, a minus 150. Speaking of tonight, Amanda Nunes, the GOAT, the Lioness, in the main event taking on Aldana. I think that it goes when it comes to female fighters all time, I think it goes Amanda 1, Cyborg 2. You gonna fight me?
Man, it's a good question. I don't know. I think I'd still put Valentina above Cyborg. I think I would. I think that, the type of talent she has, I think that she's up there for me. Cyborg's definitely a pioneer. So I think she's got to be in the top 4. And then Ronda, I feel like Ronda's got to get adjusted too. I understand, she had 2 terrible fights there at the end, but man, none of it happens if it's not for her. And before that, she was really, really difficult to beat up until those 2 last losses.
Where's a friend of the show, Joanna Jacek, the Boogie Woman? Top 5, right?
I don't know if she's top 5. I feel like she probably was. Nah, because you think about, Rose and Weili. Like, she's a pioneer for sure for the little fighter. Like, she's up there, but like, how specialized are we going to get with this list? Like, I think I've given you the nod of the person who got
no
women
criteria.
in the UFC.
If you're a female, you can make my list, and here's my list. Not that you asked, but I'd have Amanda 1, Cyborg 2, Rousey 3. I guess you could sell me on Valentina 4, and then give me JJ at 5. I got her in my top 5. She's the boogie woman.
Over Rose?
Right, yeah, over Rose.
All right.
Over Rose.
Seems
But
silly.
definitely Rose is 6 or 7. You're gonna fight me, and I don't think you are. The Masvidal Jake Paul confrontation, 1,000,000% fake.
No, yeah, they ended up doing like a podcast together or something like that. Completely fake, not a thing.
Why even just to get some clicks before the podcast? Like, why did they do that? You know what I'm talking about, right? You saw the whole thing.
Yeah, they had a confrontation at his Miami
Super corny.
headquarters. Super corny. Definitely corny. I haven't seen the podcast, so I don't know if it was a good interview or not, but I think I never really got their beef anyway. I thought that like their whole because they were cool beforehand, and then all of a sudden they hated each other. Makes me wonder if at one point is Jorge and Colby gonna hug it out, and was that whole thing staged?
Marlon Moraes, man. So he's retired now, but only after getting knocked out for the seventh fight in a row. Are you going to fight me if I say that's just a terrible corner? You cannot let your fighter get knocked out 7 times in a row before you finally hang him up. And I know there are some guys out there like Anthony Smith that says if my corner throws in the towel or whatever, then they're going to get thrown off my team immediately. Fine, but that's your job. Getting knocked out 7 times in a row, man, that's brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. I think a lot of it has been in it was funny. I think he was ended up not only was he losing in PFL, but at one point, I think before he got called back to the UFC because he had a rough ending at the UFC, he was going to go fight in Khabib's promotion in Eagle, and then he ended up going to UFC. So, look, man, yeah, probably should have hung him up a lot earlier because he's lost in a lot of brutal fashions, but. For me, it is always a tough thing. We tell these fighters, hey, you got to hang it up here. This is how they make their living. I do think that's how he goes about it. If he is, I have a hard time telling guys hey, you can't do this anymore. Stop making a living. But yeah, man, it's been a brutal watch for Marlon Moraes. And it's kind of crazy because, it's a guy that was at one point one of the best bantamweight fighters in the world. We thought that he was going to be champion.
Say the same thing about somebody like Donald Cerrone. And yeah, great fighter, but towards the end, man, when you're 1-8 in your last 9 fights and you're getting knocked out and the way you're losing quick, and Conor McGregor's beating you in the fashion that he is, at some point you got to blame it on somebody besides the fighter. Speaking of fighters, super fishy that we haven't heard a whole lot about Khamzat Chimaev. He was the guy we heard the most about for probably the first year you and I did this show. And over the last several months, coming up on a year, it's been crickets. You're going to fight me if I say something's up. I don't know what that something is, but something's up.
I don't think something's up. I just don't know what makes sense for him. I think the thing that's interesting is I just always come back to this with Khamzat is I don't know what weight class you fight in. I don't know where to divert my attention to. Last time we saw you just basically took a leak on the scale and you're just whatevs. And they just kind of let him have that. And so then they were oh no, he's going to fight Kamaru Usman, which Dana White said was total BS this week, which makes me believe it's probably true. But I don't know. I genuinely, I don't think something's fishy. I think that they're just searching for what's the right answer for him. Where does he want to fight? I don't think they really know right now.
I mean, I think you just said it. I think Usman is the natural fight to make. The question is that the guy that Usman wants to get in the cage with? Because you could argue that he's maybe a fight away already from getting right back in the championship conversation. In the case of Khamzat, that's a tough fight. What kind of odds do you think we'd be looking at?
That's a good question. I feel like Usman would be a very slight favorite. I feel like
minus 125.
I feel like he'd be a very slight favorite, but I feel like he would deserve to be a much bigger favorite. Their resumes are not even close. I think that you're not going to out wrestle him. I don't care what Khamzat is. You're not going to out wrestle Kamaru Usman. So then it comes down to a striking match. Is he going to outstrike Kamaru Usman? I don't think that. I mean, he got outstruck by Gilbert Burns at certain points in their fights. So And we've seen him be able to do it over 5 rounds against a guy like Colby Covington. Maybe you think that Khamzat has a little bit more power. But, if you're not hitting him upside the head with a leg kick, we've seen that Kamaru Usman's a pretty durable guy. He's not an easy guy. He's not an easy guy to knock down, really. So if he was a slight favorite, I would bet Kamaru Usman. If for some reason he would got to a dog, I would run to bet to Kamaru Usman.
Well, you say that Khamzat's not going to be able to wrestle with him. I don't know, man. If Usman, it's like taking down a gator, a big one. But that's going to, when they get going, I mean, the grappling to me is probably the most exciting part of that fight. I do agree that the odds would be slightly in favor of Usman, although we're putting our money on different fighters if we ever see that fight, because I'm going to take that plus money on Khamzat Chimaev. Joe Rogan, not on the broadcast tonight. You're going to fight me if I say, that's fine. At this point, I like it just as much without him. And I think it's Bisping taking his place, by the way.
I like Bisping. No, I'm not going to fight you. Like Joe Rogan he's too famous to do this now, right? Like he's got the most famous podcast in the world. He's got more money than God. You can just kind of tell, like he goes in there and he kind of wings it. Like he was a guy I'm not a Joe Rogan hater. I like Joe Rogan's podcast, especially when he talks to fighters. Those are my favorite podcasts because you can tell he's a bit of a nerd about it. But I feel like there comes a time in your fandom with everybody. You kind of have a knowledge up to it. There's a lot of us that probably like this with baseball. We're like, we liked baseball up to a certain point, and our knowledge is better than anybody's. And now it's kind of like scattered. I think with Joe Rogan, shout out to Joe Rose, who's on a QAM here in the mornings. I think with Joe Rogan, it's just kind of like, he knows like the stars. Is he that in the weeds with everybody else? I don't think so. And it kind of just feels like him and DC are spitballing, but not like in an entertaining way half the time. Like it feels like DC and Rogan, when I listen to them, they have made up their narrative on a fight 3 minutes into a fight, and they can't be shifted off of it. And I always feel like John Anik's got to be the guy who's kind of got to rein them in.
Oh, I agree with everything you said. Friend of the show, John Anik, by the way. I mean, I can't believe that I ever didn't like that guy. Not personally, just behind the microphone. Maybe it's because I was a Goldie fan, but Anik's just so good. And you're right, he does bring those guys back. Because the truth is, those dudes, none of those guys can be that easy to work with, whether it's Rogan or DC, or I imagine Paul Felder's pretty easy to work with. But like Bisping, he can go off on a tangent or two. You're going to fight me if I say, have you heard of, first of all, you've heard of Nikola Jokic, right? He's a basketball player. You know who that is?
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's
good, right? Are you going to fight me if I say he's more of a point guard than a center?
Listen, dude, I get what you're saying, but I have seen the Heat have a lot of trouble scoring around him in the post. And I also have been seeing him gobble up a bazillion rebounds. So I've seen him do a lot of center things as well. And by the way, his point guard, Jamal Murray, I think he's been better than him in this series. I know that if this ends, they're going to give it to Jokic. I'm telling you right now, Jamal Murray has hit the biggest shots in this series. His triple-double was more impressive than Nikola Jokic's triple-double was. And he should be finals MVP if the Nuggets win, which they won't. But theoretically, if they did, then Jamal Murray right now is the front runner. I don't know what the odds are right now, but like it should be Jamal Murray. I think everybody's going to give it to Jokic because of the 30-20-10. Think about this. If you're 7 foot, what's more impressive? 34-10-10 if you're 6'4", or if you're 7 foot, the team you went up against shot 35%, meaning they built a brick house and there's more rebounds than ever to be available, and you get a 30-20-10. I think Jamal Murray's triple-double was more impressive.
I was told no math would be involved, but I do know this much. Heading into this series, you could have got Jamal Murray at 25-1 to be MVP. Nikola Jokic was like 2.5-1. Producer Jake, do what you can, man. You got a couple minutes left. Go to BetMGM and see if you can get us the updated MVP odds. I mean, maybe you lay down a little bit on Jimmy Butler because you got to figure if they come back, it has to be Jimmy, right? So if I said the Miami Heat have ran out of gas, I assume you're going to fight me.
Yeah, they're going to come back, dude. Look, they're the only team to win in Denver. You got to just take it one game at a time, one play at a time, one bounce at a time. You know, they've been in tougher spots this year. They had to win their way into the tournament. They did it. 3 minutes down. That's do or die. You got to just pile up a 3-game win streak. How many 3-game win streaks have they had in this playoffs? A ton. They'll be fine.
Jokic Good job, producer Jake. Minus 3,000 to win MVP. So if you want to win $1, you got to bet 30. Go ahead. It's your money, not mine. The Heat winning the series, 18-1. BT says it's going to happen. Who knows? They've been underdogs before. The problem is winning in Denver, as you point out. Yeah, they did it, but also the Denver Nuggets didn't lose a game at home in April or May. That's 2 months. So they're pretty tough to beat at the crib. That's all I'm saying.
He'd have now lost 4 straight at home. I'm more worried about winning in Game 6 at home than I am in Denver.
Touche. Coming up next, we give you the method to the madness. How's 289 going to go down? How are we going to place our bets? You want to make some money? Don't go anywhere. You're locked in the BetQL network.